Hey, Unedited, episode 14. It's me, Ethan, and Jordan. How you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing just splendidly.
Splendid.
That's right.
Splendid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got that from you.
Yeah?
So, yeah.
Splendid.
I
You
could
got
just
the word
tell.
splendid from me?
I could just tell you were splendid today. Yeah.
You got the impression of splendidness.
Yes. Yes.
What about Splenda? Ever use Splenda?
I don't like Splenda.
It was big in the Atkins days.
It was. If I would use any of those, I'd prefer stevia.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know what drink sucks?
What's that?
Zevia.
I've never tried
Zevia?
Zevia. Yeah. Is
horrible.
it terrible?
Oh, it tastes
Someone
bad.
told me it's really sweet.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Maybe that's the wrong drink then.
Find that person,
Okay.
confront them,
Okay.
spit in their eye. That's wrong.
All right.
That's a really, really bad. Like, it's just bitter and not sweet and weird.
Okay. Do you like bubbly?
You know, I don't mind bubbly, but I would rather, if I'm going to have carbonated water that's not like a sweetened beverage,
Yeah.
I would rather have just like a lime Montpellier or something.
Or
like
Perrier?
that. Or Perrier. Perrier is a little bit worse than Montpellier, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying it
What's
right.
that Richie one that used to be at all like the rich restaurants? Pinna Grigio or something?
Pellegrino.
Pellegrino, that's it.
San Pellegrino's
And like
great.
you'd see it like in like bottles like sitting outside.
Oh,
like,
yeah. And they do sweet ones too.
Yeah. All right.
Like they've got some. Anyway, welcome to Unedited. It's our carbonated beverages episode.
yes.
Don't drink Zevia. If you like it, then tell us.
We've been waiting for this one.
Yeah. Biding our time. We knew that episode 14 was the week to bring it in. LaCroix.
Yeah.
Producer Ashley says LaCroix is another one.
Is it? Okay.
You could also pronounce it LaCroix.
LaCroix.
That's just what I put on my feet.
Is it not LaCroix?
LaCroix?
LaCroix? Like French?
Croix?
Croix?
My croissant.
I'm just wondering.
Croissant?
Anyways, we should probably move on to the episode.
Well, we got a good episode for you this week. Right now, we're just shooting the breeze. But later, we're going to be doing In My Feed, showing you a feed item from Newsweek this week. We're going to be doing In the Neighborhood, specifically talking about an awesome message that Jordan brought on this last weekend at the Neighbourhood Church. Really challenging, good stuff that we're going to engage with. And then we're going to close off with How About You, where we're just going to ask you some questions. We want your feedback.
That's all right.
So, first thing up, In My Feed.
In my feed.
Jordan, what was in your feed this week?
All right. So last week we had a exhilarating discussion about music.
Exhilarating.
I didn't mean to go there this week, but this is big news. This is big time 90s news here, okay? And the haircut memes have been epic from this whole thing. But in my feed from the website Stereogram yesterday was Oasis announced 2025 reunion shows.
Wow.
So the reason why I want to talk about this is
That's
because
surprising.
we could talk about music here, but this goes deeper than music.
Let's
This
talk
gets
about
down-
Oasis.
This gets down to sibling rivalries.
Exactly.
This gets down to all sorts of stuff that's happening. But so the band Oasis broke up. I think it was 2009. They played their last show. So that's 15 years now, which it has not felt like 15 years actually. And growing up, I liked their first two records a lot. And throughout their career, little songs here and there kind of hit a little bit. But there's always been this competition between Oasis and Blur over in the UK. And I've always been a Team Blur fan myself.
As you should.
Yeah, I should be. But when they announced this reunion show, it was surprising to everyone because of how adamant they were that they would never do this, that they disliked each other so much, that they were publicly bickering more than most siblings ever do, right? And then they announced a tour. They announced a reunion show. And so when you hear that, what do you think?
Well, first of all, just in case anybody's watching, listening, doesn't know what we're talking about, the band Oasis, the song Wonderwall.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Today is gonna be the day that's in case you're wondering what we're talking about.
I said
classic,
maybe. Yeah.
Classic band.
Yeah.
Did you say maybe?
I said maybe.
Maybe.
That's a lyric.
Okay.
I said maybe.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
I was like, when did you say maybe? Okay.
I've seen it used for so many memes in like the last 10 years.
It's very true, yeah.
And cheesy jokes, which I still laugh at.
But I listened to a whole podcast. But you should still laugh at it. But just to support you there, I agree with you. I'm still laughing at the same stuff. But
I shall.
They have an infamous spirit of being that young band that was like, we're going to live the rock and roll lifestyle.
Yep.
And like in the 90s and stuff when it was like still sort of, I don't know. I feel like there's a season where rock and roll was still a lifestyle and it's kind of gone away.
Yeah.
And I support that. Like, let's have musicians make music rather than just
Image.
going around tearing up the world. You know what I mean? But they like it's infamous how destructive, how self-destructive, how conceited, how
Yeah.
much rivalry and
Yeah.
like infighting there was.
Yeah.
Like they're infamous as this group that was just a hot mess. Even though
Yeah.
they made these crazy big hits like Wonderwall, which is like almost universally recognized, right?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised in the sense that, well, I'm very surprised about that, the fact that they think they can move on. But I'm also not really surprised because everything's coming back that can because people want money.
And that's exactly it. And that was going to lead me to my next point. I think this is like the ultimate victory lap cash tour I've ever seen in my life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they're not playing any festivals, they said. They have their 10 dates and they're going to bank on these things. And
There
they're
you
all
go.
overseas, like where they're really popular, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like Oasis had their moments early on, like with when they put up the album, What's the Story, Morning Glory. I remember there was this little music, like back then there was no streaming or nothing. So in order to actually hear music, it was either Much Music, the radio, or buy the CD. There was this little like music subscription site that you could phone in on and hear clips of songs on the telephone. And I remember I used to call in and always sample the What's the Story Morning Glory sample because they'd show you 3 clips of like 30-second clips of 3 songs.
Yeah.
And like that's so funny how we used to do music that way and how that
Yeah.
was such an exhilarating thing, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, like where I'm going with this is like they were like when they first came out with that album and they got huge, like they were releasing like t-shirts that said the next Beatles and like there was just a real arrogance and conceit that went with them, right?
Yeah.
And then as they got older, they always fought, and fighting was a big part of their legend to an extent that these guys can't get along. And then finally, somewhere around, I think it would be around 2010 or so, they finally just went their own ways, and Noel went and started his own band, Noel Gallagher's, I think he calls it High Flying Birds. And then Liam went and did Beady Eye for a little season, and then ended up just doing his own solo records, right? And neither of them can touch the Oasis material, or at least everything just felt kind of incomplete. I think Noel had a way successfuler time, though. I think he actually kept the tours going a little bit better.
Yeah.
The funny part, though, is Liam sang all the hits.
Yeah.
And so that's where you need him to come in, right? Like
Yeah.
someone's going to sing Champagne Supernova and and Wonderwall and these kind of songs,
And
right?
He was the one guy that like ultimately bailed the hardest on the band. Correct?
Yes.
Like he was
Yeah.
the guy that was like, we're
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And the band fell apart.
Yeah, and their whole story now has been like they're buddies again. No, they dislike each other again, and now they're doing this tour. But these reunion tours are interesting because you're seeing them happen all the time. I do think finances is a big part of it.
Yep.
Do you remember the band, the contemporary Christian band DC Talk?
Do I remember the contemporary Christian band DC Talk?
Yeah.
Dude, I don't remember anything but the contemporary Christian band DC Talk. That was
Okay.
my childhood.
So one of the first like contemporary Christian band albums I ever got into was Jesus Freak.
Yeah.
And the whole thing's awesome.
So
Yeah,
good.
yeah, so good, so
Yeah.
good. And then they put Supernatural out right after, which was also
Another
quite
great album.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a couple of years ago, I don't remember, I guess it was 2016, I have the headline here. Do you remember when they announced this big DC Talk announcement?
Yeah.
And the world was going like, the people who were fans were like on edge kind of thing. And then finally the
Yes.
announcement day came. And like everyone was expecting a new album, a new tour, something
Yeah.
fun. And they announced a cruise.
Yeah.
That literally they were going
DC
to do a
Talk
1-week cruise where they were going to play every night and like fans can come on board, and like the backlash against that was unbelievable, eh?
Dude, talk about ideal for the band, though.
I know.
You've got a captive audience.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And you also just get to like you're staying on a cruise.
Yeah.
Every other day, every other time that you're not playing your music with your old homies and having people go nuts for it.
Yeah.
That's like an ideal situation for a band.
I
coming
think
back.
so too, and it's quick, it's easy, and it's able to keep them in the public eye. I think
And
to
then
an
you're done.
extent, yeah, it is. But the fans were irate. Like people were like massively upset about this. Like Toby had to release a statement, or sorry, Kevin did, or Toby did, and he said, "We are sorry, it's not everything you wanted. We'd never want to let any of you down." Like it got really like emotional towards there because the fans were like backlashing on this thing. Like you guys are doing a cruise. Like most of us can't even afford to come to your concert. Never mind spend $5,000 a person to come on this boat with you guys, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So it was really seen almost as like you shouldn't even have bothered making an announcement if this is what you were going to be doing, right?
Yeah.
But I do think a big part. This is where I'm going with this. I think a big part of these reunion tours are cash. I think
Big.
towards the end of it, you recognize that people buy into hype and people like reunions because reunions bring people back to a part of their life that maybe isn't always there anymore. And I think the Oasis tour is going to sell out like crazy.
Yep.
And I'm not going, but I'm not buying the plane tickets and the big money, but I do think it'll be a massive, massive thing.
Call me when it's Blur.
So,
right?
well, you know, Blur is going the opposite route. They just finished their tour and they're claiming they're done now.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
We'll talk about the Blur tour in 10, 15 years.
We'll see
I
him
assume.
exactly. We'll see him in 15 years.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, you kind of brought up this thing about Blur versus Oasis.
Okay. I
And
did.
it's sort of a would you rather.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
this week for my feed,
Okay.
I found this online thing.
Okay.
It's just would you rathers.
All right.
Would you do would you rathers with me?
I'm going to do would you rathers with me.
Yeah, I
with
guess you kind of have to.
Yes.
You're stuck here.
Yeah.
We're sitting.
Let's
It's
do
recording.
It's on.
You can walk out now if you want.
Let's have it. Hit
Okay.
me.
Okay, here we
Hit
go.
me.
You ready?
Yep.
Would you rather
Yeah.
sweat maple syrup or cry strawberry jam?
Holy smokes. That's a weird one.
Think about
I
it.
would rather cry strawberry jam
Okay, wait.
because maple syrup, I sweat all over my body and it would just be so sticky everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
At least the other spot can be contained just to my face.
And it would hypothetically only be when you cry.
Yes. Exactly.
However, think
Yeah.
about the fact that strawberry jam has lumps of strawberries in it. We're not talking about strawberry jelly. Clumps of strawberries,
Yeah.
strawberry seeds
Yeah.
coming out of your tear ducts.
Yeah.
Have you ever passed a crystal through your tear ducts before?
No, but it doesn't sound fun.
I imagine it'd be brutal.
Yeah.
I've seen videos of people doing it,
Yeah.
which is quite honestly life-changing.
Yeah.
But I think I would probably prefer maple syrup just for the sake of, like, imagine trying strawberries. Like, strawberry
I don't
jam is
know.
not far from just mushed up strawberries.
No, it's true. It's true. But the maple syrup, though, it depends what season we're in. If it's winter, I'll take the syrup
Okay.
because I'm not going to sweat a lot in winter probably.
Okay.
But in summer, I don't know.
Oh, and the bugs
I play
would be
lots of
bad,
golf.
too.
Can you imagine this? Oh, man. The wasps would swarm me if I had
Yeah.
maple syrup all over
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah. I'd go with the strawberry jam, I think.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Which shoe would you rather wear every day for the rest of your life?
Mhm.
Ugg boots or Crocs?
Wow.
That's tough.
That
eh?
is a tough one.
These are good questions.
Yeah. Well, we live in a climate where the Crocs are at a disadvantage, I think, because winter Crocs.
Whoa.
Unless you buy
Okay,
big
no,
socks.
Keep going.
Unless you
No,
buy
no,
big
yeah.
socks or something, like to wear those outside in the summer, like wouldn't that get like a little cool?
Well, you can
wear
buy
'em-
different kinds of Crocs, but I'm assuming we're just talking one type of Ugg boot, one type of just basic
'Kay.
Crocs, basic Ugg boots. So none
Okay.
of these. You can even buy Ugg boots that are like full on winter boots and stuff.
Yeah, because you'd have the opposite problem in the summer, I guess, with the boots.
Yep.
So I don't know, probably the Crocs.
Really?
Yeah, you could dress them up different. You could
you
you could buy those thick wool socks and wear them underneath if you have to.
Do you get foot chafing in your Crocs?
I don't.
Interesting.
I don't think so.
My foot was literally raw from
Was it?
chafing inside my Crocs. Last week when we did Unedited,
My Toms
I was
did that when I
wearing
used to
Crocs.
remember Toms when we
Yeah.
used to have Toms. That
Dude,
that used to chafe my
everybody
feet.
went barefoot in Toms
I know.
for years. And I'm like, what were we doing?
I know, and then I started
Sweaty,
buying those little
gross.
socks because they smelled terrible, right?
Yep. And
Yeah,
those little
birds.
socks were worse for your feet. They're just compression socks for your toes. Anyways,
This is true.
enough about feet.
'Kay.
This isn't a foot podcast.
All right.
So you're saying the Crocs. I don't know what to say. I would probably say Crocs as well because it'd be nicer in the summer and you could layer up in the winter.
Exactly.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Just don't be outside too much, otherwise you're done.
Yep,
But Uggs would be great in the winter. You could wear those all winter.
that's the trade-off. Yes.
Okay, here's another one.
Okay.
Would you rather have eyebrow hair that never stops growing or knuckle hair that never stops growing?
Eyebrow hair or knuckle hair? Probably knuckle.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, because the eyebrow hair would get really annoying.
Well, I mean, you could shave it.
I guess
could
so.
trim it up.
I guess so. Yeah.
Would you? I think the question is really, would you rather shave your hands or your face?
But like,
Use trimmers on your eyebrows. You know what I mean? Like if you're you got a soul patch. If you trim
Yeah.
that up, you probably just run a trimmer on
Yeah.
it, right?
I don't know.
You just run one on your eyebrows.
Yeah, maybe the eyebrows. Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough one.
Do you like that I'm asking you, would you rather, and then I'm trying to convince you of
You
what
are.
you should say?
You are. Yeah. I don't know, because like the hands, you could just get used to, like, I don't know, you just wax them, right, or something,
Yeah.
like, and just every so often take that hair off.
The
But
pause is what got me on that.
yeah.
The
But the eyebrows, like you said, like you just take your little clippers and just kind of
Yeah.
figure them out. But
clippers.
But I feel like there's more chance I would mess this up
Yeah.
and like have like patches going and stuff. The hands, I think I could be a little bit more like.
But in the years, maybe 2018 to 2022, if you messed up and had a little notch in your eyebrow, you would have been cool.
Exactly.
To 16% of the human population.
It would have worked out, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
16% of the Canadian.
we'll call that one
population.
a draw, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Okay, okay, this is a good one too. Would you rather chew with your mouth open for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
or always have your phone calls on speaker when you're in public transport? And for the sake of this, let's just say that you're in public transport like on a daily basis
Rather chew with my mouth open.
for the rest of your life.
Well, I find this is invasive for the rest of my life, right? Like I had to have speaker phone calls in front of people, and it's just awkward when someone's talking on speaker in public transport. Like I've seen it actually. I've seen this play out before.
Okay.
And I feel like can you please just put your phone to your ear and like, we don't all have to hear. It's bad enough that we're listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't need to hear both of you talking in this place.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Do you ever tell people that? You say it's bad enough that we have to hear you.
I definitely don't. I'm too much of a peacemaker to ever invite that conflict upon my life for no reason.
So instead of starting a conflict, you just walk up and you just press the end call button and walk back.
I literally
conflict.
just roll my eyes and sit there thinking, what is this person doing?
Wow.
And probably smugly. It's a terrible thing. I got to get over it.
Judgy Jordan.
So a little bit in that way, I guess.
It's
Yeah.
trending now.
Yeah. Do you like do you like when people talk out loud in a conversation like that on a public transport?
I honestly couldn't care less.
Okay, so it wouldn't bug you.
Not really.
Okay,
Like
so
I personally, I would answer the
what
phone
if the
call
conversation was getting awkward, like very awkward, like very personal
for somebody else or for me.
for them, and you had to overhear all this?
I don't care.
That wouldn't bother you, eh?
No, it's their life.
See,
Doesn't matter.
to me, it's like keep that to yourself. Like I don't need to hear all this kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, like
So-
this is the thing is I'm like, if it's bothering them, I would start to care. But if they don't care, they have it on speakerphone, even though it's going down, Like
Yeah.
they're talking to their partner and it's like, you're such a failure. I don't
Yeah.
know, whatever. Like
Yeah.
stuff is going crazy.
I guess, producer
then I
Ashley
would be
just-
like, I would feel for them, but I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I would be like, it doesn't affect my life at all. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
producer Ashley just brought up a good point. You don't have to answer your phone.
Yes. So that's what I was gonna say.
So then I would take the phone then.
No, you can't change.
Yeah, I'm not answering
You can't
it.
change.
I'm just not
You can't
answering my
change.
phone
You said
no more.
speaking
No.
with your mouth open because
changed it.
it's my opportunity to respond to what you said and
Okay.
say I would do the opposite. Okay. So you can't go back.
Okay.
You're stuck.
Okay.
Jordan,
Yeah.
you're stuck with it.
You need my mouth open.
That's get that
It'd be
mastication.
Great. It'd be great, eh?
Yeah, they'll call you the amazing mastication.
Yeah.
Man. But in terms of phone calls, I would
Yeah.
do it in public transport. So even if I was doing it every day,
Yeah.
I would just not talk to people while I'm on public transport.
Okay.
Like I don't need to talk to people.
Yeah. Well,
when
I know.
I'm going somewhere.
I never thought about that.
And the
way.
small times I would,
I-
you could just say,
I
"Hey, I'm on the
painted-
bus right now. I just wanted to say, are we still good for 10 o'clock or whatever?" You
See,
know
I'm
what I
not making the rules on these things, and I thought that I had to talk to people. Like if I had to answer the phone calls, I'd still stay the way I was. But now that I don't have to, I could see why you'd go that way.
A likely story.
The next one, if you give me another one, I'll think about it in those terms.
Okay. Would you rather have to wear a wedding dress or a bikini every single day?
Neither.
No, you have to answer, man. It's a would you rather. It's a would you rather. This one's crazy easy for me, but I'm actually, why are you taking so long?
I'd wear the wedding dress.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
no way.
But I'm trying to think about how that would feel though too. Like, yeah, I don't know. So,
The question is, could you put something over top of your bikini? Could you wear like your t-shirt and shorts over top of your bikini?
well, that's the other thing. Exactly. I never got that
Because
far.
then you'd be good.
Yeah.
But a wedding dress, to me, it's just like, just cover me up more. That's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what everybody else
Jacket
is
and
most interested
scarves. Jacket and scarves
in. Jacket and scarves.
over top the wedding dress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of summer, you got a big
Yeah.
puff jacket with a scarf. There's just a wedding dress flowing out from underneath
Yeah.
the jacket. You're like, nothing abnormal here.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just a guy in a jacket.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're both on the wedding dress one.
Okay.
Okay, let's do like two more and then we'll be done. Okay?
'Kay.
This is just going too good. Whoa. I don't understand what this one is, so I'm skipping that one. The
anticipation is building here.
I'm trying to rephrase this one because I want it to be palatable, but this is also a really good one. So, would you rather, so you know how sometimes you're texting your wife and you might be sending, like something romantic, even if it's just you fill in the blanks. It's with your wife. Okay, would you rather missend a romantic wife text to a relative or to your boss?
To my boss.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
in a heartbeat.
Seriously?
Yeah, because I think me and him would joke about it.
Okay.
And I think we'd have a good laugh about it. But with a random relative, holy smokes, this can get kind of strange,
Okay,
right?
you know
like
what,
it just,
though?
It would just because I got so many relatives. I guess my dad's side was 16.
Yeah.
My mom's side was like 9.
You're like, these are
And
virtual
so part of me
strangers.
is like this. If this can go to anyone, this can get really strange.
Right,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
You?
let's say your mom.
Yeah.
Your mom or your
Yeah.
boss?
Boss.
Your dad or your boss?
Boss.
Your brother or your boss?
Boss.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd rather
Do you
text
think
my
that-
boss's stuff.
Do you think this is being influenced by the fact that we have a really chill boss?
That's exactly it.
Because I would literally joke with Louis about all sorts of marriage stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that probably plays into it. Imagine that you were
I
just
think-
working in an
I think
office.
my last 4 bosses, though, I'd still take all 4 of them.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
What if you're working in like a corporate office? I just want to find what the circumstances would be that you would answer boss to this. So what if you're working like in an office and it's a setting where like this person literally only manages your timetable. They got you in trouble this week for being late and they're always on top of you. Or like, let's just say it's more of like a normative boss experience where like they're a manager, not like a person that you have a relationship with.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily what I would advocate as healthy normal, but it is for a lot of people. What about that?
Probably still.
What? So your boss is just like, wow, you're a little freak, Jordan.
Well,
Like,
sure, and it won't hold any. It wouldn't bother me nearly as much as like offending a relative.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Most all of my family.
If I could pick which relative it was, then I'd change my mind.
Tell me which relative.
Wow, if it was just like someone I was close to, who I could just laugh about it with, kind of thing, right?
Like your wife.
So there you go.
Oops.
So
Sent the wife text to the wife. My
there you
bad.
go. There you go.
She's like, what is this?
So yeah.
Okay, so I think like almost all of my family, I've done it before. I've texted my brother something for my wife, and then I just say, oops, that was for Alyssa. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And then we tease each other about it.
Yeah.
So I would probably rather family.
Okay.
Even though like our boss specifically is very chill, so it would be very normal. You know what I did one time? I texted my landlord when I was trying to text my wife.
Okay, that'd
And
be
I was
awkward.
texting my wife about how late he was to come to our house.
Yeah.
And I sent that to my landlord.
Yeah, that'd be that's more of an awkward situation.
So you know what I did when he showed up? I said, oops, that was awkward. Just pointed it out. And I
Yeah.
said, I was trying to tell my wife about
Yeah.
the timeline for you being here. And since you were later than you said you would, I just owned it.
Yeah.
So
So you even
so I
talked
just
about
laughed
him in the
about-
text.
I brought it. Yeah. Well, I said, this guy said he would be here in 45 minutes. It's been 2.5 hours.
Okay.
And I sent that to him, and he said, on my way.
I
And
pre-
then I said,
I appreciate
yeah,
you.
so-
I appreciate you owning it, and I think that probably spoke good volumes to the person. So I think I've done this before, and then just wiggled out of it somehow,
interesting.
and just like sort of like acted like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, be careful who you're texting.
Okay, here's one more.
All right.
Oh, actually, so there's a whole bunch here, and I'm trying to make sure I pick the best one because I want it to be the best it can be. But there's just a lot of really good ones. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this one. It's a vegetable question. You ready for it?
Perfect. I love vegetables.
Okay. Would you rather have fingers made of carrots
Yeah.
or feet made of aubergines, eggplant?
Eggplant. That's a really hard one.
It is.
Yeah,
Imagine how delicate your little eggplant feet are.
I know. I'd go with the fingers, I guess. Yeah.
How
Carrots.
are you texting people? You're not able to use your phone anymore.
I'm just doing this. Siri, text.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did it trigger?
No, it didn't
I
actually.
wonder if anybody listening
actually,
or
it did right
watching
here.
got triggered.
It
You
did-
got
it
triggered
did-
on the iPad?
It did on the
Okay.
iPad. Yeah. Oh, don't.
Let's
send,
just run through
Don't
them
send
all.
that to my relatives. Stop it.
Alexa, text wife. Just try to get somebody who's listening or watching to have a...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you said carrots for fingers.
I would. Yeah.
I'd rather the feet, man, honestly.
Yeah.
Even if they break, then you got stubs. You could get prosthetic feet. I don't want to lose my fingers, man. I need this dexterity. Imagine how many things you can't
hard.
do with carrots
Hard.
for fingers.
It's hard. Yes.
One
yes.
of which is text your wife or your boss.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
always going to just anybody. You know what I mean?
I guess, eh?
Yeah.
That's a really hard one. There's no win there.
Well, since you said that was a difficult one, that satiates my curiosity with this topic, and we're done. We're done with Would You Rather. There's a little
All right.
peep into Jordan's psyche and perhaps mine as well. I definitely weighed in more than usually somebody who's asking questions would. That's in my feed. It's time for In the Neighborhood.
In the Neighborhood.
Are you ready?
I'm all set. Yeah.
You ready for In the Neighborhood?
I am. I'm good to go here.
So you spoke
I
this
did.
weekend.
Yeah.
It's a good sermon.
Thank you.
I've told you a few times.
Yeah.
So
Thank
lots
you.
of times at church. So anybody who's watching, listening, if you're unfamiliar with the Neighborhood Church, every weekend somebody speaks and shares like thoughts on Scripture, a challenge for us, something that challenges us in Christian living, or how we like our theology, which is like how we think about God. And this week, Jordan really brought something that was incredibly applicable, wasn't it? You just
I think so. Yeah.
like 100% application.
Mhm.
So you had some main points. Do you want to say anything about them, or do you want me to list them? How do you want to get into it?
I'll start just by talking about the passage I referenced.
Perfect.
It was in 1 Corinthians 9. The whole chapter in 1 Corinthians 9 is Paul defending his rights as an apostle.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, like, I have a right to get paid for what I do.
My rights.
But in his situation, he denied himself of that right because he didn't want to give the Corinthians something to accuse him of.
Yeah.
That was his own doing. He still had a right to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had a right to provision. He had a right to take a wife. Like he talked about all these things in that passage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then he talks about how free he is. And sometimes I think when we think about the word freedom, we think about what we're free to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the Apostle Paul also shows that he was so free that he could do what he wanted, but he could also deny himself when he wanted as well.
Yeah.
And that was an exercise of his freedom,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he talks about how when he shares the gospel with people in different cultures, he says, though I am free, I belong to no one. I've made myself a slave to everyone. So that sounds like a paradox, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he says this, to win as many as possible. And that's the driving point behind the Apostle Paul's life, is he wants people to accept Christ and to know Jesus. And he says to the Jews, I become like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I become like one under the law, right?
Mm-hmm.
To those not having the law, I become like one not having the law. To the weak, I become like the weak. And so you could almost read this and think to yourself, like, does this guy have like different personalities going on every single day? Like, is he just putting on a different character every single time he goes out? And that'd be a fair assumption. But the idea behind it was that the Apostle Paul recognized the audience he was speaking to. He knew their cultural hangups. He knew the things that could bring division and really end a conversation before it even started.
Mm-hmm.
And he made sure not to mess with that. And he made sure that when he approached certain cultures that he was respectful of their culture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he didn't change his message. He it's not like he was changing himself every day, but he used wisdom when he approached different people. And I think there's something to that in life that will help us in our interactions with each other if we recognize, the first thing me and you get together to hang out with, I don't go after something that's like taboo in your life that I'm just going to offend you for no reason, right?
Yeah.
And just annoy you, and all of a sudden our conversation ends before it even has a chance to start, right?
Yep.
And so I think when he talked about I become all things to all people, he was referring to the cultural hangups that can sort of like hinder the progress of a good conversation about the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, he laid down his rights because he wanted to have that conversation. He wanted to see people come to know Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's his freedom to choose what he does, and so he chooses to go without so that others could have.
Exactly. Yeah.
And,
And that's freedom, in my opinion. Like that models freedom big
Yes.
time. Maybe not how we understand it in our world today,
No.
but like he was so free that he could do that.
Well, the more free a person is, the less they're concerned about their freedom.
Yes.
Which is
That's a good
interesting.
point. I like
People
that.
that are overly obsessed with it usually aren't actually free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's loaded, what I just said.
Yeah.
We don't have time to get into all of that, but
Yeah.
there's a lot to say about that. Let's just leave it there.
For sure.
There's a guy, I don't even remember his name. He spoke at my brother's wedding. He spoke like a sort of like a blessing at my brother's wedding. And he was saying, he had this talk about freedom. And he said how in our culture, lots of times we think freedom is all about leaving every door possible open, leaving every option open to yourself. But really, in reality, freedom isn't just about leaving doors open, because then you're not actually free. You're just setting yourself up to be free and never actually acting on it. You're never actually living free.
Yeah.
Freedom is actually having a choice and making a choice.
Yes.
So some people, like, for example, he was talking about this at a wedding because he was saying, you guys are free to choose whether you would like to be together, whether you'd like to be with somebody else, whether you'd like to be with one person the rest of your life or a bunch of people or whatever. And he was saying, you're activating your freedom. Like, the freedom is in the choice of exclusivity, because without it, you're not actually, you're just leaving doors open.
Yeah.
That's not actually living in freedom. And I think that really comes down to, as Christians, we should recognize that our freedom is to be able to make a choice and to actually choose the direction that we go, what the influence and priority is going to be in our lives. And when Christ sets us free, he sets us free to choose him. It's not that we are compelled, like compulsed to choose him, but the freedom is in the choice, like actually making the choice. And so commitment isn't the opposite of freedom. Anyway.
Yeah.
I digress. I think it's an interesting point, though.
No, I like what you're saying. And this freedom that Paul talked about, what I eventually did in the talk was I brought it to 5 practical items that we can take into our world that'll help us have, better conversations and be able to, the whole sermon series is on sharing Jesus. So being able to share Jesus in a more, I would say, effective way. So I said 5 things. I said to make sure you listen. I said go to their things.
Yep.
I said lean into disagreement.
Absolutely.
Merge your circles. And the gospel is not a tribal badge. It's not something us versus them thing.
Yeah.
And let's go through these really quick, okay?
Absolutely.
Listening to people is tougher than I think we realize. I think oftentimes we listen because we want our chance to speak. Or we listen often trying to dissect what they're saying so we could rebuttal or come back at them, sort of an idea.
Just listening, waiting to say your thing.
Yeah, but
like, I got the point so I can respond.
Well, and
right?
that's the thing. But just listening to someone is like the ultimate form of respect, right? Like, if you expect people to listen to you, shouldn't you also listen to other people? It just makes more sense to me, right? That, but listening's an art in our culture because I do think that sometimes we don't slow down enough to listen. And, I get this all the time at home. This is my own little confession here, right?
Yeah.
But like, Nick will look at me and be like, did you listen to that? And I'm like, can you repeat it again? Like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes we just take little details for granted, right? That we're not truly giving focused listening. But when you listen to someone, not only will you learn what they're about, but I think they're going to feel honored. And it's going to keep you from making assumptions and things like that. Because in our culture, it's easy to assume, right? So listening's interesting. Going to their things is just natural. If someone invites you out, go with them, right? If you want people to come to your things, you go to their things. And oftentimes, that's how friendship's built, is just by hanging out with one another and going to each other's stuff, right? Yeah. I've gone to so many things that I wasn't gung-ho about, but, most of the times they turn out okay. But, sometimes they're still kind of whatever, but it's just respecting people enough. If I want them to come with me to something, I should also, I should also make sure I take up their invitation as well. Yeah. Nothing worse than a relationship where it's just one-sided that way, right?
Yeah. And part of it's just occupying spaces that people are. Like it's, so you might think in our culture of like a program that you would attend or like a game that they're playing in or something like that, or either kids' party. Yeah. But it's also just like occupying the spaces that they occupy, like Paul did. Yes. Where Paul went to the places of Greek philosophical discussion, which were like the meeting places of, discussing what is life, what is existence, what's our purpose. Yeah. And he went there and engaged with them there. He wasn't like, hey, you guys come to this house church that we have, and then I'll talk to you about what I think. He's engaging in their spaces.
100%. Yeah. No, that's definitely... Jesus did this stuff all the time. Like, he was always ending up with having dinner at, like, the house of what the scripture says is a sinner, right? And I brought up the example of Zacchaeus, I think, and how the people muttered when Jesus went to go, like, he's actually hanging out with this sinner kind of thing, right? Yeah. And he got in trouble for a lot of this stuff. And rumors started about him and his character because he would hang out with people that people didn't think were fit for hanging out with, right?
Seemed salacious.
Yeah. But he'd go to their things. He'd hang out with them.
He went to the well, too?
Yes.
There's countless options there. But
that's right. That's a great example. Actually, I love that one, John 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leaning to disagreement. Oftentimes when we disagree, there's this tendency to want to just take our ball, go home. Listen to each other. Yep. Find out why you disagree. Talk about it. Discuss it. try to do it in love, right?
Yep.
And when someone disagrees with you, remember that it's not necessarily an attack on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they just don't agree with the idea or the premise, right?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to take that stuff personally that I think we run from it in our culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And disagreement almost seems like break apart kind of thing, but no, disagreement sometimes is simply just disagreement.
Yeah.
And we can still respect and care for each other in that. But rather than running from it, unpack it, look into it more,
Yeah.
right? Who knows where you'll end up
Yeah.
in the conversation.
I think there's two what's the word? Contrasting sides to this. People feel a spectrum probably in terms of like how comfortable they are to lean into a disagreement. One side is they really, really don't want to do that. I don't want to disagree.
Yeah.
And the other side is jumping to disagreement. And there's a whole spectrum. And I think lots of times when we say lean into disagreement, we're talking to people where it's like you're either too eager to jump into a fight that you need to actually have a conversation about it. Like you're already eager enough to disagree with somebody, but you need to lean into this with the listening attached to it. And then the other side is leaning into the disagreement from being so shy that you won't disagree with somebody to push yourself to actually engage in a meaningful conversation.
Yes.
And can I give you an example? There's a propensity in strongly convicted individuals who are socially extroverted, maybe comfortable. They don't mind awkward moments. They don't mind like having conflict in their life. You know, if they are firmly based in their beliefs and their convictions, they might see this lean into disagreement thing and be like, perfect. I already do.
Yeah.
I love it, you know? And I've known people who, particularly because I'm around a lot of Christian circles, a lot of the people I know would be in these Christian circles where they're just like, well, yeah, anytime somebody brings something up, I'm okay to say I disagree and engage in that conversation. But we have to balance it with listening.
Yes.
It has to be balanced
100%.
because there's too many people who would, and I don't mean this is like a vast majority or anything, but like even one is too many people who are saying, I'm totally good with disagreeing. Let me jump in there, and not listening enough to recognize that you're shutting down somebody who's easily shut down by your overly outwardness or whatever.
Yeah.
Listening means that also if you're going to disagree with somebody, it means that you're able to, like I've had conversations with people, for example, where I've started disagreeing on something just because something comes up and I say, well, actually, I don't really think, like that's not what I think. And the way that they respond, like I've had people respond in a way where I realize, oh, I'm shutting this person down. Like I'm not leaving an opportunity for them to continue that conversation. I need to pull back and I need to let them speak more and hear more from them so that they know when I disagree with them, I'm not trying to avoid listening to them.
Yes.
And that's the trick. Because I've literally been in conversations where I've done this myself, or I've been with people where, like, as a pastor, people talk to you about these social things. So, like, people have come to me as a pastor before and been like, this person, every time I talk to them, they just shut everybody down in the conversation.
Yeah.
Because they're so eager to disagree, but they will not listen. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents, is we need to have it balanced with listening. Otherwise, you're just
100%.
being a jerk. So.
Well, that's the thing. And the idea has got to be, you know, beneficial to some extent, right? Like I've had conversations when I was younger where you almost just fight just for the sake of winning the argument, and that's not helpful to anyone.
Yeah.
Right? So
What's the
I like
point?
what you said.
Yeah.
I like what you brought up. The fourth thing was merge your circles. Was this idea that and I use this in the sense of like people who are Christians. Like oftentimes we have our one circle that's Christian, our other circle that's non-Christians, and sometimes we just keep those two sides to themselves.
Work in church folk.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought, like, you know, I had a friend who was really good at bringing them together, and it was awkward the first time or two. For sure it was.
Yeah,
it was a little bit, like, not terrible, but it was a bit awkward, right?
Yeah.
But before you know it, friendships build, relationships build, and all of a sudden somebody who only had influence with you now has influence with 7, 8 other people, right? So there's something important to merging our circles. I think that's important. And lastly, this idea that the gospel is not a travel
Can I say
badge.
something about merging circles?
Please go in,
I just identify with that struggle too.
Yeah.
Because some circles it's easier, but for example, I try to keep a good relationship with my neighbors.
Yeah.
And we're chatty, and I've got a number of my neighbors so I can text them about things or whatever, you know, try to keep just a neighborly relationship.
Yeah.
And I've thought before, he's pretty similar to my age. Man, it'd be hilarious if somehow he was listening to this podcast. But it's close to my age, and I've thought before when I have movie nights at my house, it's mostly church people coming over.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh, I should just invite him over, just have him over to join. But the thought occurs to me, I'm like, but would this group be too awkwardly, like, unaware? Like, would they just be like,
Would they welcome him?
Christian talk, Christian jokes,
Yeah.
speaking in like religious terms?
Yeah.
Like, even in a social setting, lots of times, whatever subculture you belong to, you can just end up talking like that if everybody belongs to that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing is that will never change unless you invite somebody outside of that subculture into it.
Exactly.
So like
Yeah.
as much as that could hold me back from saying, well, I can't invite my neighbor who I don't know if he's faith affiliated or not. I have no idea from that level. I just know him as a person.
Yeah.
If I don't invite him in, I'll never know. And
Exactly.
these people that are coming to my house will never know whether they should change their vernacular and be more welcoming and accessible in what they're talking about.
And it would change their vernacular for sure. I think it would change the tone of the night even, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, when we're watching movies,
Yeah.
we're not sitting around talking about church all the time. But, just the things you
Yeah.
say, right? Like the words you use and stuff. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. The last point was that the gospel is not a travel badge. And what I meant by travel badge was that it's not like something that just marks the person who knows Christ. Like it's not like an us versus them idea. We got to get rid of that mentality that like people who disagree with you are your enemies. No, they're just people who disagree with you.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And the whole point of the gospel is that God loves me, loves you, loves everyone. Right. And so we gotta be comfortable with that. Like it's not an us versus them. Like we're not going out against, trying to like fight enemies or anything. Like we're going to try to love people and care for people. Right. So we got to be careful how we frame the gospel and how we frame who owns it or whatever. Like, it's God's grace to the world, and his grace is available for you and me. And we need to embrace that. It's like, it's just really recognizing our common shared brokenness will take us a long way, I think, in talking to other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that helps us break down that distinction when we recognize I'm broken, you're broken. Like we're all, just because I've entered this relationship with Jesus and I have my faith and my, theology getting figured out, just because I'm there, it hasn't separated me from the people who I am just like.
Exactly.
Some lifestyle things will start to look different, whatever, but you're still just the same. Yeah. And I think if I can, I'm just going to talk directly to any Christians that are listening or watching. I think one of the least Christian things we can do, so one of the things that looks the least like Christ, is create others out of people. Yeah. Creating others is
I was thinking of that word,
so
actually.
contrary. Remember that book?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exclusion and Embrace.
Yeah.
You read it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Creating others out of people is so opposite to what Christ did as an example. And what he did through his life and ministry, death, resurrection, establishment of the church. It's absolutely counter gospel.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you're a Christian and you believe in Christ and what he did and the example he set, then you also understand that there is this idea that when you're in Christendom, you're either for Christ or against him. And I think when we make others out of people, we are actively acting against Christ. We're making adversaries out of ourselves. Yeah. And lots of times we don't even realize. Yeah. So that's really strong, but I just want to say that, like, it's really, like you said, it's not a tribal badge. It's not to differentiate us.
100%.
If we start doing that, we're going against the thing that we say we're for.
It's important. Yeah. I like that.
Good stuff. Well, we could talk about this forever.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
No. Not today. Not today.
Well, great sermon. Thanks for letting me add my thoughts while you went through your points, because it's really, man, like it's one that we could just keep talking about. We kind of actually were talking about this a little bit last week, hey? Yeah. Like we were talking about people year round and stuff, right? Yeah. So that's it for In the Neighborhood. And now it is time for How About You?
How about you?
So how about you? This week, I just want to give like an extra strong challenge. I want to encourage everybody, if you're listening to this, if you're watching it and you enjoy it, why don't you send it to somebody? Why don't you follow this? So if you're on Spotify, you can like it, you can follow it, whatever. So it's in your normal rotation. You'll get updates when we post, or whatever platform you're on, just like use the interactions. We would love to have your comments. As well, this is, you don't have to necessarily send this to somebody who's outside of the church if you don't want to, but even just people that you know who are Christian or whatever, like, you know, maybe it is an opportunity to like expand your circle a little bit.
Absolutely.
But just send some interaction our way. We would love to hear from you. We would love to interact with you, and we would love for this to get out to some of your people in your life.
Definitely.
Anything else from you?
Nope. I think I'm ready to go.
You ready to sign off?
Yeah, I'm hungry.
What's our sign off?
So
Hungry.
let's go eat lunch.
Let's go eat lunch?
Let's go eat lunch.
What is this? This is like I am not a crook. He's doing double peace signs here.
Yeah.
Okay, Nixon, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
We will see you next week for episode 15. We're going to go eat lunch. Yum, yum in my tongue.
Unedited is a ministry expression of the Neighbourhood Church. Hosted by Ethan Andrews and Jordan McClellan. Produced by Ashley Drayton. Voiceover by me, M. Curry. Watch us on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. Or listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Thanks for listening.